Good evening, sir. Thanks very much for your time. Let's start with the proposal from Treasury that perhaps, Eskom should sell off some of its coal-powered stations to raise 450 billion rand. On what basis did Eskom say to you that it's going to reject, or it's rejecting this proposal?
Well, thanks, Vuyo, and to the viewers. I think at the outset one must clarify that in terms of due process, that kind of policy decision in any case is not within our purview as SCOPA. But of course it is something we must consider in the course of trying to institute corrective action. So the committee is not going to express itself concretely on this matter. Safe to say that there are considerations which the country would have to strictly apply itself to insofar as this proposal is concerned, because there are far-reaching consequences both ways, whether you sell off or don't. Let's take the example of the fact that Medupi was initially 179 billion rands costed, and now it's going to be about 146 billion rands. Anybody who's going to be buying that is not going to buy it at the value of 146 billion rands. They're going to buy it at the actual value, which is supposed to have been, which is 79 billion rands. Because the escalations arise out of the fact that there was poor planning, there is evidence of serious corruption, tender manipulation, contracts have been, gone AWOL in terms of how people have been handling those and so on. So you are not dealing with fixed costs here at this point in time. You are dealing with a bloated budget where we now have to plug the holes. One of the things arising out of the findings is that, look, from birth, this project, experts are telling us, should have taken 3 years to plan at conceptualization stage. We did it in 1 year. And so because of that, you are building but also fixing at the same time. And so if you're going to then be speaking about buying, you have to consider all those things, whether it is in the national interest to do that. Secondly, you've got power stations which are about to reach their end of life because, power stations have just generally over time will fade out. Medupi and Kusile exist currently, notwithstanding the challenges, but they exist as part of the major contributors to the grid. So if you now start tampering with that to that extent as part of your corrective action, the opportunity cost is there may be a lapse as you do those kind of things which may have adverse consequences. So as a committee, our function is whether they sell or don't sell, whether they unbundle or don't bundle, whatever course of action they take, our expectation is that there should be no more leakages and the fiscus should not bleed any longer. We need to hold Eskom accountable to its own commitments. The deadlines that they have set, we are drawing a red line to say those are the final deadlines. So let's allow the process of consultation. Eskom has said that they will explain their position, and I think they will do so in far more greater detail. National Treasury was present at our meeting, and they had initial reactions to that as well. But we certainly do not want to preempt the process or preempt Eskom, because it is their responsibility to explain their position.
But from the Treasury's Director General said in Parliament yesterday, something has got to happen. There's no more money. So those who are entrusted with specific responsibilities must just do their work. Did Eskom give any indication to the committee as to where they think, some improvements can be made, or is what should happen next? Look, in other words, if they reject, a sell-off, of these power stations, what do they think should happen instead?
Look, the issue is that let's not get SCOPA meddling or in this to and fro.
No, it's trying to get a sense from people who are playing an oversight role. Maybe you would have been privy.
No, of course. But I think let's draw the line here, that none of these two options are not without their challenges and without their problems. There are consequences both ways. And so there's nobody, whether it's Eskom or National Treasury, that can stand in confidence and absolutely defend the position that they will take. What we must confront now is that whatever route, there are financial implications for the country. Secondly, let us also consider the fact that it's the very same Treasury that is giving bailouts to Eskom. And so they need to find alternative solutions which don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think I must also put on record, because I think whilst there are problems with Eskom's Medupi and Kusile, but there has been work that has happened. That's why I'm saying that, 4 of the 6 units at Medupi, for example, are feeding electricity. They're in commercial operation. And one was synchronized on Tuesday just after we had left, and now it's in testing phase. Kusile, 2 of those are in commercialization, and some are in synchronization, and then the others are in completion stage. So whilst there are defects with the construction and with some of the work that has been done, we must not lose sight of the fact that these escalations arise out of the fact that there has been a collapse of contract management. The escalations arise out of fraud and corruption. Systems are not in place. Wrong decisions were taken. Undue pressure was. One revelation, shocker, is that the mad rush was because we had to meet the 2010 deadlines for the Soccer World Cup. So the World Cup, which was claimed to have been the messiah of South Africa's economies and that do us huge favors, has in fact been, in one way or the other, a cause to the fiscus bleeding. And that arises out of wrong decisions. So whilst we find ourselves at this point, we need to look at the historical realities which have brought us here. And what is very clear is that tender manipulation arose. The threat of contractors to Eskom to say, if you don't comply with our demands, then we're going to pull off site, and literally holding the country to ransom and putting a gun to the country's head. It borders on recklessness. So what we are saying, Escopa, is that the over 1,000 investigations of disciplinary actions that Eskom must undertake, that must happen. On Monday, they'll provide a report in terms of how far they are with that. The SIU and the NPA need to fast-track investigations, because in this whole mess, the one thing that has been absent has been consequence management. You've got people in this space who have got a conflict of interest, who are doing business with Eskom. You've got employees, they will leave Eskom and then come back now as contractors because they've got the necessary knowledge, skills, and expertise and the insight. You've got a situation where audit reports are not being listened to. The management letters are not receiving the necessary attention. So there's a litany of things which the silver bullet is not just the sell-off. The silver bullet is a multi-pronged approach which says everybody in the material spaces needs to undergo a process of corrective action. Now,
given that history, did you get a sense from Eskom that they have started plugging the holes? In other words, they are dealing with supply chain management issues, that those disciplinary processes are in fact happening, that clean people have been put in very key positions, that they are basically beginning to reverse the tide. Did you, from your conversations with them, did you get a sense that they have started doing that indeed, as has been claimed?
Look, we can safely and with caution assume, on the basis of the interaction, that work is being done. There have been disciplinary processes which have been undertaken, and in more detail those will be spelled out in the report that Eskom is going to submit. We have interacted extensively with the SIU on this matter, but you'll also recall that just last week, SCOPA and SIU arrived at an agreement on the process of referrals for cases, but we needed to actually ascertain where the SIU was and where we would then come in, and so that process is underway. So let's give that space and time, and I'm pretty sure that in the coming weeks there will be some action in that regard, because some matters are being tied down. We are also looking at the investigations which must go into the contracts. I mean, there's contracts where one contractor, CBZ, is in business rescue. Medupi is doing away with it, but you have a situation where at Kusile, they still want to find ways and means to correct that. And so Eskom must really explain how they want that kind of particular process to continue. So from where we are seated at this point in time, because this was a fact-finding mission, we are establishing and clearing the woods, trying to understand the space in which we are operating from. But what is fundamentally clear is that we will be duty-bound to make very strong recommendations as a committee to Parliament to make sure that the processes are in place. So I think we will be in a stronger position to report on cases next week, but the reports that we've received, not just from Eskom, but all the relevant stakeholders, even through the anti-corruption task team, is that, yes, disciplinary processes are taking place. Are they to the extent with which we would wish? No, they are not. There's still a long way to go in that regard. But what we had to do is trigger the process, make sure that it's happening.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it for this evening. Thanks very much
for
coming through, the chairperson of Parliament's Public Accounts Committee.